It's been a while since we built an end-to-end tech stack with Spring Boot. In this video, this is what we are going to build. We are going to build 3 different microservices: the producer, the processor Kafka Streams, and the consumer. So we are going to look at how to leverage Kafka Streams inside a Spring Boot application. Let's get started.
Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss any update from Tech Primers.
I'll just walk you through what we are going to build as a part of this particular video. Initially, we are going to build something called as domain controller. Domain controller will be the classic Kafka producer. I'm not going to use Kafka Streams here because I'm just going to produce some data into the Kafka topic. In order to produce some data, I'm going to use a public API which is going to provide me some domain information on what websites are available in the internet so that I can book them. For example, if let's say I put techprimers.com, is that particular website available in the domain registry so that I can book it? So I'm going to use a public API to scrap that information, and I'm going to use something called as a crawler, which is just going to query my public domain and then get those data from that particular API. We're going to publish that information directly onto a Kafka topic, and I'm going to call that particular Kafka topic as web domains. From the web domains Kafka topic, we are going to create a consumer, or I will call this as a processor. This particular domain processor is going to consume all the messages which are coming onto the web domains Kafka topic, and using Kafka Streams, it's going to filter out some of these messages based on the type we wanted. For example, there are inactive and active domains which are getting pulled in. So I want to get only the active messages. So for that, I'm going to create another topic which is going to be called as active.webdomains, and the processor is going to now publish or filter out all the messages and then publish only the ones we need into the active web domains. So that's why the domain processor is just a processor, because it's just consuming something, filtering out something, and then just publishing again. So it acts as a consumer and the publisher at the same time. So once we publish the message onto the new Kafka topic, we will be writing another consumer which can leverage the same Kafka topic and then consume only the active web domains. For the sample, I'm not going to persist this into a database, but if let's say you want to extend the demo into another level, you can persist the message whatever I'm going to show into a database. Also, we can add another layer. For example, from the domain processor, we can add another Kafka topic where we can publish inactive messages so that we can consume those messages and then identify or do something with it, right? So these two I won't be building, the database persistence and the inactive part. Apart from that, I'll be building the other stacks. So let's get started with the coding part. As usual, I'm going to leverage the start.spring.io for creating the project. I already have followed the Apache Kafka Docker setup. So I have my Kafka instance running. So let me show you. So I have the Kafka instance up and running here, and I can access it directly using the 9021 port here. So this is the Kafka control center from where I can look at the Kafka clusters. I can go create some topics, etc. I'll be showing the creation of topic in a bit, but meanwhile, let's create our Spring Boot project. I'm going to create a Maven project with 2.3.10. I'm going to call the project as com.techprimers. The first one we are going to create is called as a crawler. So I'll just call this as a crawler, right? I mean domain. So com.techprimers is our group, artifact ID is domain, and then crawlers. I don't want to have a hyphen in my package name, so I'm just removing that. I'm going to use the jar packaging and Java 11. For dependencies, I'm going to leverage webflux because I'm going to consume the message via web client, and I need only Kafka. So the moment I type Kafka, I have different ways of consuming messages from the Spring Boot application. So I'm going to use only Spring for Apache Kafka. This is just the Spring Kafka dependency which I'm going to leverage. So I don't want to use Spring Cloud Stream here. However, for the other two microservices, the domain processor and the domain service, I'll be leveraging the Kafka Stream. So let's first create the domain crawler. The next one is the processor. So I'm just going to call this as processor. I'll also remove the name here. So instead of the Spring for Kafka, Apache Kafka, I'm going to leverage the Kafka Streams here. Also, I'm going to add the cloud stream, so that way I can use the Kafka Streams, which is going to be the binder for the cloud stream. So I'm going to use Spring Cloud messaging with Kafka as the binder, and in fact I can remove the web flux because I don't want to add them. So we have only two dependencies here, the Kafka Streams and the cloud stream. So with that, let me create the project. The final one is going to be called as the domain service, so I'm going to create that as well. So let me do that, domain service. So I'm going to use the same dependencies because I'm going to leverage the Kafka Streams to consume the data from these active.web domains topic as well. So I'm going to leverage the same Kafka Streams and the cloud stream. What you will be able to differentiate is, if you look at the diagram from a high level, these two will be using Kafka Streams with cloud stream. And I'm not going to use any cloud stream or anything. I'm just going to use vanilla Spring Kafka. So you will be able to differentiate how much code I write here and how much code I write in these two applications. So let me go to the IntelliJ. I'll open all the three projects in IntelliJ and come back. So I'm opening all the projects in IntelliJ and it's loading all my payment dependencies. Meanwhile, let's look at the setup, what we have done. So as I mentioned earlier, I have brought up Kafka locally in my machine. So it's running right now, and I'm going to access Kafka and create the topics whatever we require. So like I said earlier, there is a control center using which I can create some topics. So right now let's go to the topics. Here there are no new topics, there are only 4 topics. Let's create the 2 topics which we require. The first one is called web domains, so I'm just going to create that. Since I don't have a huge machine, I'm just going to have one replication factor for my topic, so I'll just create with that. So that's done. One of the topic is created, and the other topic is active.web-domains. So I'm going to create that as well with one replication factor so that I don't have any issue. Done. So we have both the topics created, active.web domains and then web domains, right? These are the 2 topics which we require as a part of our implementation. Meanwhile, let me go back to IntelliJ and then see if the project got loaded. Yeah, the projects got loaded. I can see all the project in one view. That way I can walk you through all the implementation here. So let me minimize. The first one is the crawler. So in the crawler, as you have seen here, we are going to produce data by consuming some API, and then we are going to publish that into the web domains. So I'm going to use the Spring Kafka. Now let's go to the POM XML and then see what dependencies are present. See that there are only 2 dependencies, the web flux and the Spring Kafka. I'm not using the Spring Cloud Stream here. I will show you what all changes you need to do in order to just leverage Spring Kafka and not Spring Cloud Stream. The first and the foremost thing which I would require is to configure the Kafka topic or configure the Kafka instance into this particular application. So I'm going to create a Java class called Kafka producer config. This is the configuration, the Java based configuration which I'm going to add for connecting to the Kafka instance. So I already preloaded this particular config, so I'm just going to load that here. So let's see. Yep, things got loaded. I don't have the domain here, so let me create this particular domain. So I preloaded all these configuration beforehand. Let me walk you through that. Before that, let me create this particular class so that it doesn't fail. Then we can come here. So we're good here. So what are we doing here in this particular file? So I'm creating a Kafka template and injecting the producer factory, which I'm creating manually. So why am I creating these manually? Because I want to serialize my data which I'm publishing. So I'm going to leverage the JSON serializer because I'm going to publish a JSON message. So the message I'm going to create is called as a domain. So I'm going to create a domain model. So based on the public API, I'm going to create this. So let's look at the public API, how it looks like. So let me go back to this UI. So this is the public API which I was talking about, domainsdb.info. If you click on this API documentation, you can check a sample information. So this is the sample message format, and I'm going to consume this particular type of message. So my domains will have a list of domains. So this particular API is going to give me domains, which is a list. Within the list, I will have domain, create date, update date, country, is dead, if the website is dead or not. Then we have different route or DNS specific information which I have for that particular domain here. So I'm going to leverage the same domain model. I'm not going to change this particular domain model, and I'm going to leverage the same in the application. So that's why I am creating this domain model here, right? Apart from that, I'm going to use the string serializer for key, and the value serializer has the JSON serializer. So this is all coming from the Spring Kafka serializer. So that's all with respect to the configuration, and I'm using the Kafka which is connected locally, so I'm just leveraging the local Kafka instance for now. With that, let's move on to the domain model. Even the domain model I created and kept it ready, so let me just show you. So this is how the domain model looks like. The same fields whatever we just saw, I've just recreated it. If you are using Lombok, you can use it. I've just recreated them earlier, so I just loaded them automatically, right? The next thing is creation of a trigger point. Now, how do I trigger this particular pull, right? I can have a scheduler which can pull them automatically, or I can expose an endpoint. So I'm going to create something called as domain crawler controller. I'll just expose an API endpoint for us to give a particular text so that we can pull only that particular text. For example, if you see this particular public API, you need to provide a particular domain name so that it can go and search. So I'm going to pass this particular domain name, say example here, this is Facebook. I'm going to pass this dynamically by fetching the information from the user. So I'm going to create a new controller using which I'm going to fetch information from the user here. So let's create this as a REST controller. So I'll just call this as a REST controller, and the request mapping is going to have a mapping. So let's add this as a domain, and I'm going to add some get mapping so that I can query. I'll add my URL as lookup, and dynamically I want to pass some name for the website or the domain. So I'll just pass this information here. I'm just going to call this as public string lookup. So this is a path variable, so I'm just going to use the path variable annotation so that I can get that information into this particular variable. I'll just create a variable called name. Done. Now this particular variable, we are going to pass it to the public API. So I'm going to create a new service which is going to be called as the domain crawler service. So I'll just create this class under the same folder. So this will create a new class. So inside the domain class service, I'll annotate this as service, and I'm going to add some things here. So let me go back to this site here. I need to load this, so I'm going to add this as private. I'll add this as a constructor parameter so that I can inject it. Here I am going to return, let's say, domain crawler has scrapped your data. So the user needs to see something, right? So I'm just going to return saying the domain crawler has scrapped your data, and I'll call the domain service to crawl the name. So we are passing the name whatever the user requested to a crawl method. This method doesn't exist right now, so I'm going to create this particular method. So let's create this method, and here I am going to use the Kafka template. So if you know earlier, we are going to leverage the Kafka template here. Before that, we also are going to use the web client. So I'm going to use the web client for querying the public API. So I'll just say web client.create, and I want to do a get call, which is the get method on a particular URL. So this particular URL is nothing but the URL which we can get it from this particular API endpoint. So I'm just going to copy the same here. Let me copy it, and I'm just going to paste it. So here if you look at it, Facebook is dynamic, so I'm going to replace that with the name variable which is dynamically coming for us. So that is the URL which you're going to pass, which is the URI, and this is going to accept the JSON type message. So I'm going to provide the media type as JSON, and we are going to retrieve the data, right? So once I retrieve the response, I want to convert this into a type called mono, and I want to create the domain here, right? And if you notice, the domain is a list, so I want to create it as a list. So I'm going to create a new model which will be a list. So I'll just create this as a list. So if you see, this will have domain, and it's called domains. So if you see here in this diagram here, so if you see here in this model, we have domains and then we have this. So we created this already, but we don't have domains, right? So that's why I created something called domain list, which can hold this data. Let me do all the necessary stuff which we require. So I've created all the necessary getter setters, etc., right, so that we can have the model ready. So the model is ready. We have converted the whole response into a domain list object, and we can just maybe store it into a variable, right, for now. So let's call this as domain list mono. Now that we have got all the list of messages, we need to convert this list into individual messages, and then we are going to publish them. So all these messages are not going to be published in one go. Instead, I'm going to publish these individually. So I'm going to iterate and then publish them. So in order to consume messages from this mono, we need to subscribe to it, right? I'm just going to subscribe to this particular mono, and we are going to, all these are domains, right? I mean, I will just go say domains. Yeah. So it's a domain list. So we are going to consume the domain list. That domain list will have domains, right? I mean, that's what we had. And for that domain, I'm going to iterate each of my domain and publish that message. So in order to publish the message, we are going to leverage Kafka template, right? So let me create a Kafka template. We are going to inject this particular variable here. It's going to be of type string and domain, right? Because that's what we have. We are going to publish the key as string and the value as domain. If you remember the configuration which we added here, we said key is going to be a string and the value is going to be a JSON message. So the domain is going to be JSON, the key is going to be string. So we have the Kafka template which we already created as a part of the config, which is present here, and I'm going to leverage the same. So we need to auto wire this. So I'm just going to auto inject it using the constructor injection. So we have the Kafka template ready, and using the Kafka template, we can now send the message to the respective topic. Now, which topic should we send it to? We already had a topic in mind. So I'm going to create the variable for that. It's called web-domains. So that's the Kafka topic name. I'm going to provide the same Kafka topic name here, so that the Kafka template knows where it needs to send the message to. And what type of message are we sending? We are going to send the domain message. So I'm just publishing my domain message, whatever I got here. For our tracking purpose, I'm just going to add some log statement. I'll add a log statement called domain message. I'll just get some domain name, right? I mean, let's print that message so that whatever domain comes in, we will be printing it after sending it to the Kafka topic. So that way we know the message got published. That's it, right? So we have what we have done here in this crawler is we exposed a controller. Using the controller, we gave some lookup name. Using the lookup name, we are crawling the domainsdb.info API, and we are publishing those response messages onto a Kafka topic. And that's what we are doing here. We already added some configuration information for serializing our data. Since we serialized this particular domain, every particular consumer will have the same domain used there. So I need to create the same domain in this particular processor as well. So I can do that. Now that our job is done for the crawler, let's go to the processor. So in the processor, if you remember, we used the Kafka Streams. We did not use vanilla Kafka. So if you use vanilla Kafka, this is how you will be publishing the message using the Kafka template. But if you're using Kafka Streams with Spring Cloud Stream, it's much simpler. You don't have to write this much amount of code. So let's see that here. So let me go here. Let's create a new class here. I'm going to call this particular class as domain Kafka processor. So this is going to be a configuration class because I want it to like start up when the Spring Boot application starts up, because this particular processor, there is no trigger point for it, right? The trigger point is just the Kafka message. So I'm going to configure it as a configurable class, so that way it starts up when the application starts up. And I'm going to inject some bean, which my Spring Cloud function or the Spring Cloud stream will understand. And this is going to be a function type. So I'm just going to inject a function I'm going to take in Kafka Streams. So K-stream is a Kafka Stream interface. I'm going to use that. The key for it is string and the value for it is domain. If you remember earlier, we created that, and we are going to convert that message into again a Kafka Stream with string and domain. So that's what we are going to do here. I'm going to call this particular method as domain processor. Meanwhile, we need to create our domain. I'm going to copy this whole thing here and then paste it here. I'm going to create the same folder structure. So I'll keep the same name, domain crawler, and I need to save it into the processor. So I'm just selecting the processor and done. So I'm creating the same domain. If you're using a single monorepo kind of a setting, you can leverage the same. If you have a multi-module project, you can do that. Since I did not create a multi-module project, I'm just recopying everything, right? I mean, that's the thing. So I have the same domain copied here, which we can leverage in the processor here. So that's it. We don't have to code everything. I just copy pasted it. Now we got the message, we got the function. So the message is going to be coming as K-stream. We can have it called as anything. Let's call this as K-stream, and this is how it comes, right? I'm going to filter the whole data of the domain based on the active or inactive scenario. If you remember, we had a field called isDead, right? So I also mentioned in the architecture diagram that we are going to consume only the active web domains. So we are going to filter out inactive ones. So I'm going to do that in the implementation logic here. So I'm going to use the filter to filter out messages as a part of the Kafka Streams, where my key is going to be present and value is going to be present. Key is the string and the value is going to be the domain, right? And I can maybe call this as domain to make it simple. So using the domain, I can just say domain dot is dead and then filter out the data. If it is not dead, then just return the result. So I can simplify this, but what I want to do is I want to filter out and I want to log some message. Let's say I want to log if the domain is dead, I want to just log a message just for our tracking purpose. So I'll just say inactive domain if our particular domain is inactive, and I'm just returning it. Also, I thought, okay, we can publish the active message, so let's do a else, and then let's see, I can print the active message as well. So I'll just do, instead of doing a peek, I will directly do a active domain. So this will print out now the active and the inactive messages before even pushing the message. So I've just filtered the message from the Kafka stream. So what the processor does is gets the message, filters it based on the active ones, and then just publishes it back again. That's it, right? I mean, if you look at it, I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to code any other thing into this processor application, because I'm just leveraging Spring Cloud Stream with Kafka Streams so that I can consume the message, process it, or filter it, or transform it, and then publish onto another Kafka topic. Now, how does it know which Kafka topic to publish to? I'm going to create a new configuration file. Instead of adding the Java configuration, we are going to create a YAML configuration here. So I already loaded some YAML configuration, so I'm just loading it here. So here you can configure the broker information, you can configure the binding information, what is the consuming topic, what is the publishing topic. For example, in is nothing but the consumption topic, which is web domains. Out is nothing but the publishing topic, which is the active.web domains. So if you see here, that's what we mentioned, right? So we are going to publish it into, consume it from web domains, publish it into active web domains. That's what we are doing as a part of this particular configuration. And finally, we want to serialize and deserialize the data, right? Because earlier when we published it from the crawler, we already serialized it. So we need to deserialize that. And that's what we have done here. The configuration for deserializing is present here. And again, when we are publishing it out, right, to the active topic, we are going to again serialize it. That's all. So this is the only configuration you will require for the Spring Cloud Stream to function, and you don't have to write any Java code. And it's simple, right? I mean, that's all. We don't have to do any other coding in the processor. We have created a processor. In that, we have consumed the message from the Kafka stream using the K stream, processed it, filtered out some information, and then we are returning whatever we want. So that way, only those information which are active will be sent to the publishing topic. That's it. So our processor is also done. Now let's move on to the domain service. So let me minimize these two folders. So let's go to the domain service. In the domain service, again, we have to consume these messages. So we are going to leverage the similar kind of example. So we already have configured it to use Kafka Streams. So I'm going to use the Kafka Streams to consume the message. So let's call the new Kafka stream as domain Kafka consumer. And this is again going to be a configuration class. Similar way, I'm going to create a bean. So for this, I'm not going to create a function. Instead, I'm going to create a consumer. Why we created function in the previous example is we consumed a message and then we published it again, right? That's where we used function. But here we are going to use a consumer because we are going to consume the message and then not publish it. We are just going to do whatever with it, right? I'm going to just log it for now, right? So let's use the consumer interface and we can leverage the Kafka stream interface. So I'm going using the Kafka stream interface. The key is the string and the value is the domain. So we are going to leverage the same. The domain is not present, so I'm going to copy the domain again from the processor. It's the same domain. I'm just going to copy the same folder and then put it here. Done. So we have the domain as well. So let's import this here. The consumer is ready. I'm going to call this as domain service because it's a service. Here again we have to do the K-stream. So I'm going to iterate the key value pair and then I'm just going to print it. That's it, right? I'll just do key and then domain. That's what we have, right? So I'm going to print the domain. So I'll just say string.format. I'm going to print the domain name and also the active or inactive status. So I'll just say status. That way we know whether that particular domain is active or not. So I'm just getting the domain and I'll also do is get. So if you see here, what I'm doing here is, let me move this a little bit. So we are consuming the message from the K-stream similar to what we did in the processor. We are consuming it. Since it's a consumer, we don't have to publish it or we don't have to send anything back. So I'm going to use the for each to consume the message directly. So I am not returning anything back except the handler, right? And we got the message here. We are printing the exact domain information, whatever we got here. I'm using a string format so that I can just parse the message into this particular, the square braces here. That's it. We don't need to do anything else, right? I mean, if you look at how simple it is to consume a message in Kafka Streams, we don't have to leverage any other implementation. Instead, you can directly use the consumer or the function which is provided by the Java util, and you can still leverage the Kafka Streams to consume those messages. The only other thing which we will require is the configuration. Similar to the configuration which we did in the processor, we will have to add configuration for the domain service. So I'm going to add the configuration. So I already loaded the configuration. So we are going to deserialize the data here. So I have the deserialized configuration with the Kafka binding for the Spring Cloud stream. And I also have the configuration for the topic destination from which we are going to consume from. So this is the active.web domain. So this is the topic which we are going to consume the data from. So that's all. I think we all have all the application done. So we created 3 different microservices. The first one is the crawler, using which we are going to pull the data from an API, publish that message into a Kafka topic. We then created a domain processor which can consume the message from the web domains, and then we are going to publish that into active web domain based on the filtering logic which we have. And we finally created a domain service which is going to consume the message from the active web domains. So let me go and start all these processes so that we know it's all working. So looks like I added a configurable here instead of the configuration. That's the problem in the Kafka processor. Let me start that with the configuration. So I should have added configuration. So I think the same mistake was done here as well. Yep. Yep, see here the processor is also up. Let me go to the service and start the service as well. So we have all the three applications up and running now. So the first one is running on the port 8080. That's where we have an endpoint exposed so that we can trigger some data so that it can pull the data. And we have the domain processor, which is connected to the Kafka topic, and also the domain service, which is also connected to the Kafka topics. Now let's go and trigger the endpoint. Let me bring the browser here. So we have to trigger the endpoint localhost 8080. We have created a domain / lookup, and we can provide some data. So I'm going to provide the Facebook as the domain name, so it can go and fetch all the similar domains which are having the names called Facebook. So let me press enter. The moment I press enter, you see in the background this is going and pulling all the domain information. Yeah, so this is going and pulling all the domain information from the domains API, which is the crawler. Now the crawler would have published the messages after this. So let's go to the processor. In the processor, yes, I can see the active domain filtration. It is printing all the domains. See that there is a website called Facebook COVID-19, Facebook currency, etc. All these are getting filtered out, which are active, right? All those are here. Now the processor would have filtered all the inactive ones, and it would have sent only the active ones to the domain service. And in the domain service also, I can see that the status is false, which is basically like it's not dead, right? I mean, because the flag says is dead, so I think we should have made this as active, right, or inactive or dead, right? I mean, we can change it, but yeah, that's the thing, right? So the application is working. So I'll just summarize what we just did, right? We created a domain crawler which is going and crawling information about a particular search text from a public domain API. It gets those information from the API, publishes on to the Kafka topic. Here we are not using the Kafka streams. Here we are using this Spring Kafka, which is the vanilla Spring Kafka, and we are publishing the message onto a topic, which is the Kafka topic called web domains. From the web domains, we are consuming using a Kafka Streams application using Spring Boot, using Spring Cloud Streams. We are consuming the application from the web domains topic. Using the Kafka Streams, we are filtering out only the active messages and publishing only the active ones onto the active.webdomains topic. From the active.webdomains topic, we are consuming the message via the domain service, and we are just logging it here. If I look at the code, the Spring Cloud Streams code is much simpler by just creating one particular class. So see this particular class is for converting one particular stream to another using function, and for the consumer bit, we just created a consumer using which we consume the message and then just logged it. That's it. And we had some application YAMLs where we had some configuration information which we had done here, and also in the processor where we have some configurations as well. But in the crawler, we had to do a lot of configurations with respect to Java here, because we were using the Spring Kafka. If you're already using Kafka Streams here as well, it will reduce to a greater extent. I just wanted to show you the difference between the Spring Kafka versus the Kafka Streams. That's why I put the producer as the Spring Kafka and the consumer as the Kafka Streams. So that's all I had for this particular video. I hope you found this particular video useful. Do leverage the code from the GitHub repository. I have put the diagrams and also the code into the GitHub link in the description below. I hope this was pretty much helpful for you to create an event-driven system using Kafka Streams. As always, if you like the video, go ahead and like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to it. Meet you again in the next video. Thank you very much.